You awake to a loud thump as the waves crash against the hull of the ship. The halls echo with instructions from your captain. "There's a storm coming, boys." You jump to your feet and race to the top deck. Some of the crew are scurrying frantically to secure the hull, but there are so many of them missing. As you begin to question where they have gone, you hear shouts of "man overboard," and turn to see your peers leaning over the edge of the ship, fixated on the ocean. They begin to jump one by one to almost certain death. As you approach, you start to hear a song. The song is familiar, but at the same time you've never heard anything like this. The song has a soothing effect, and you are captivated by the melody. You begin to forget your surroundings. You no longer hear the screams of your crew, or the waves that bombard the ship. You are no longer in a storm. You glance into the distance, and see the outline of a woman laying on a bed of rocks. It appears that she is gesturing for you to join her, but as you look down, you see the lifeless bodies of your crew being carried away by the waves. Unable to stop yourself, you begin to climb overboard, knowing that it would mean certain death. If only you could warn the rest of the crew of the song. If only you could stop them sharing your fate. But at this point you are nothing more than a passenger in your own body. As you plunge into the cold, dark abyss, you finally realize that the siren's song is the last you will ever hear. In Greek mythology, the sirens were beautiful creatures, but they were also extremely dangerous, luring many sailors to their doom with their enchanting voices. The sirens are mentioned by numerous authors, and they are said to be the daughters of Phorcys, one of the primordial sea gods, and their mother, one of the 9 muses, which could be why they are graced with such elegant voices. The amount of sirens is something that varies depending on the author or the story, and most tend to disagree. In some stories there are 2 or 3, and in others there are many more. According to some of the older stories, the sirens accompanied Persephone, the daughter of Zeus and Demeter. Shortly after Persephone's abduction by Hades, the sirens were given their wings. In some accounts, the sirens requested these wings in order to aid them in their search for their mistress, and in others, the wings were a form of punishment from Demeter because the sirens were unable to prevent the abduction of Persephone. Their song was an enchanting but sad melody, eternally calling for the return of Persephone. It's because of this myth that the sirens were depicted as birds with the heads of women, almost harpy-like. The earliest depictions of the sirens described them as nymph-like creatures, and they could be seen living amongst the muses. There are stories where the sirens would compete against the muses to see who had the best voice. When the sirens lost, as punishment they would have their feathers plucked from them. One of the most famous stories regarding the sirens can be found in Homer's Odyssey. In this story, the sirens are said to live on an island near Scylla. The hero Odysseus is warned how dangerous the sirens are, and he comes up with a plan to cross the island safely. In order to stop his men being seduced by the sirens, he had them block their ears using wax. Because of his curiosity, Odysseus did not block his own ears, as he wanted to hear the song of the siren. Instead, he tied himself to the mast of his ship, and as they sailed past the island, his men were unaffected by the sirens singing. Odysseus, however, struggled to resist, but his men stood firm and ignored his demands to untie him. Odysseus would become one of the only men to have heard the song of the siren and live to tell the tale. In some versions of the story, there was a prophecy that stated if anyone heard the song of the siren and lived, the sirens would die. There is an alternative ending to this tale, where the sirens would take revenge on Odysseus by taking his son. Another popular myth involves Jason and the Argonauts, who had to sail past the island of the sirens. Rather than block their ears, the Argonauts had the famed musician Orpheus accompany them. When the sirens began to sing, in an attempt to seduce the Argonauts, Orpheus began to play his harp, and the music overpowered the voice of the sirens. One of the Argonauts did fall victim to the Song of the Siren, and he jumped out of the ship swimming towards them, but he was lucky enough to have been saved by the goddess Aphrodite. The sirens are definitely interesting creatures in Greek mythology. Their exact origins may be a little bit hazy, as there are several figures that could be considered their mother and father. Over the years, their appearance has definitely changed, going from nymph to almost harpy-like in Greek mythology. If we take a look outside Greek mythology, the sirens are now depicted as almost mermaid-like creatures who live in the sea. They serve as a warning that looks can be deceiving. They are both beautiful and deadly.